Asvoria.
Today we're thrilled to have Dr. Kim Nevelsteen with us, a distinguished expert specializing in mixed reality and its application in pervasive games. With a profound dedication of advancing the metaverse through his research on interoperability and system of systems integration, Dr. Nevelsteen is at the forefront of shaping how virtual and real-world elements coalesce seamlessly. His insights are not just shaping the current landscape of mixed reality, but are also pivotal in forging the path to a fully integrated metaverse. Join us in exploring the depth of interoperability and the future of immersive digital experience with Dr. Nevelsteen. Welcome, Kim. Can you explain the importance of interoperability and the evolution of the spatial web and how it affects user experience?
Well, I think that the easiest way is that to explain that is with an analogy. So I think if you were to consider the amount of virtual worlds that are in existence today, then analogy would be like if you had the World Wide Web of on the internet, and then you didn't have any links between web pages. So that's kind of like what we have today with virtual worlds. Is you have a whole bunch of virtual worlds, but there's no links between them. So in order to advance that, you definitely need interoperability. And then interoperability can stretch between a number of layers. So it's not such a simple concept, actually.
No, definitely not. Russell, maybe you can add something to that.
Yeah, I mean, just as Kim said, imagine trying to surf the web where every web page had its own protocol, had its own interface, had its own browser, for example, and there was no way to simply transfer data. You'd have to go through a bridge to go from one to the other. It would be an absolute nightmare. But unfortunately, that's the situation we find ourselves in with blockchain and specifically with metaverses. And so they're all siloed. They're all on their own island, and they don't talk to one another. So it's, we obviously want to get from a user experience, we want to get to a point where you can take assets that you use in one metaverse and transfer them easily into another, and go back and forth and have multiple virtual properties and worlds that can integrate with one another and can work with one another easily and seamlessly, and that's really where we're heading to, hopefully.
Yeah, and also the bridge between Unreal Engine, for example, and Unity. That's not easy to make it interruptible. But you already have some videos online, Kim, where you are showing what you're doing. Can you summarize something that we can see in that YouTube series?
So the overarching difference between my approach and other people's approach is that when people speak about interoperability, the first thing they say is, well, we want to be interoperable with another system. Then the first thing that comes into mind is, okay, well, we need a common protocol or we need an SDK. And if both systems implement that protocol or that SDK, then we're fine, and where you have interoperability, which is entirely correct. But if you're going to look at like something like creating the metaverse, then since there's so many different systems, then having that would mean you would have an exponential amount of integrations that would be required in order to make that happen. So yeah, so one approach is then to say, okay, we're like you have the metaverse, a metaverse forum, and so they have like 2,000 participants, and so you can try to get all 2,000 participants around the table and try to come up with standards. But I think a different approach is better in the sense that you can have the systems, each with their different protocols and such, but then you have translations in the system, so that you allow for the systems to have discrepancies, so that you reduce the complexity by allowing these translations to be reused as well. So then you just ease the problem, and so you have a lot less friction in order to get the metaverse hopefully to come about.
Yeah, Russell and I was discussing also one of your videos where you put a layer on top of Twitter and making it a link. It's really amazing that you can do this.
Very impressive. I was watching that video, and then I was like, oh my God, he just hacked Twitter. That's incredible.
Yeah, so I mean, so I saw in one of the videos that Elon Musk wasn't didn't prescribe to the idea that the metaverse would exist. So it was kind of a personal idea just to poke him a little bit and make Twitter interoperable.
Nice.
I loved it.
And how do you envision a platform like Asvoria contributing to the solution for interoperability issues within the spatial web? Obvious, we are working with you, but how would you do it?
Well, I think that the whole point of the technology that I'm using is I would like to start something called the industry of integrations, which is the idea that you can have that the community itself can create integrations. So it is not up to the up to the systems alone to do integrations. So, for example, each world is doing their best to create their best experience for their users as possible. So to go up to a world and say, you know, great, you're doing a great job creating a virtual world, but you know what, I really want you to be able to cater to third parties. So then they would have to designate some of their resources in order to make that happen so that they start being interoperable. So again, to ease that problem, then you, instead of saying that, you say, well, don't divert resources to development. What we want to do is just open up your system to what you have. So you don't have to make any changes, just make it so that there's an API in whatever language is that you have already implemented, and make it just accessible. And then if then the community wants to have an integration, they can then use that API and then bind that to others' APIs. So then the idea is that you can have an industry of this. So whoever comes up with the best integration then can put that on the market and say people can download it or even pay for the best integration. And then you could have an ecosystem of integrations then arise, which is then the industry of integrations that I just envisioned.
Nice.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I read that the website that you sent the link to, and it's honestly, my first thought was, how has this not been done already? I mean, it's such a critically important and needed component to Web3 that it's such a glaring weakness right now. It's inevitable, and I'm glad that you're working on this. I think from what I can see, you're the best person around to do this.
Oh, there's some players already in this space. So, I mean, there are a number of companies that do integrations. So they make use of the APIs that are in existence, and then they offer that as those integrations. So I think 𝗧𝗶𝗺𝗀𝘀 is one. And I think if then that is another site. And so there are people that do integrations, and I think there's some chain-to-chain integration companies as well. So those players exist in this kind of industry already. But the thing is, we want to open up it more so that there's also competition in this, and so there's not one integration possible, but that there's more, and that the community can then, that there's a market for this. So and then this then opens up for innovation and for better techniques and things like that.
Wow. Okay. So, and what recent technological advances do you find most promising for improving interoperability in pervasive games and the metaverse?
What technologies? Well, obviously mine. I think I really want to push this idea again to not have this idea of we have to have a common protocol, or we have to have a standard. So the idea is not to avoid standards, but to avoid the need for standards. So we want to have, I mean, you want to have standards develop more organically from the ecosystem, so that you can see okay, there's a path of message traversal here, and that there's 3 hops of translation happening. Someone could look in and say, we want to optimize that. Okay, we're gonna create a translation that optimizes that path, and then if there's a lot of participants that are having an interface that are very similar, that you can say, okay, well, we're going to gather the common aspects of these different protocols, and we're just going to try to make a standard out of those. And then you're going to ease the translation out of maybe a market share of maybe 20 or 30% of the metaverse ecosystem. And then there might be another 70% that are still using different technologies and such. So, and eventually maybe you'll get to 2 or 3 different competing protocols, but and that's okay. And then the obvious advantages, which I also want to say is like the standardization and software development kits also kind of inhibit innovation, because like if you have someone who doesn't want to adhere to the standard because they want to have more features or something like that that's not already in the standard, then getting that in there is also a problem, because you have to voice your concern and then and it has to be adopted and such. So, but if you have this kind of thing where people are allowed to create deviations on the standards that exist, and then a translation can be created, then that's fine too. I mean, you allow for this innovation to happen. So again, more organically than this kind of stringent of, we're going to start with a standard and everyone's going to adhere.
Will it be as easy that my grandmother can access Web3, do you think? Or is it something for the new generation?
No, I think it'll definitely get there. For Web3, I'm not up to date with how much innovation would be required in order to get Web3. I think there's a lot of regulation problems still. Like with my own personal experiences, I mean, just getting the whole KYC and you're trying to get your funds from your bank, and then having knowledge of how to work with Web3 efficiently. There's still a large threshold there in order to get that all to work. So there's definite room for improvement. But I think for the metaverse and getting seamless operation, I think like I have a demo where I teleport from Minecraft to Doom, and now when I created that demo, I was just blown away myself on how immersive it was, because of the fact that, I mean, I was programming just the two systems for a while, and then I didn't have the full-blown teleport going back and forth. And so, but then when I first achieved that, the first teleport going back and forth, then I was just really blown away. Like, it really felt seamless, because that I was going between systems. Even though you're going between different protocols, so it's like, it's technically, you could call it somewhat of a hack, but it was just mind blowing that it's like my immersion just was really, really nice to get that feeling actually. So yeah, I think the seamlessness can definitely be there. It just needs work.
Yeah. Russell?
Yeah, it's amazing. My one question I had is in terms of proprietary assets. Like I'm assuming you physically, when you're watching this teleportation, it's an avatar that's going back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
And so any clothes, any items that the avatar has, how do you deal with that in terms of the two platforms don't share items or avatars or things like that? So how do you get that translation happening? How do you go from Doom to Minecraft and not wreck the whole avatar, I guess?
So I prescribe to another tenet, which is that, which I've also said in one of my videos, is that I believe that world owners have the right to choose what goes in and out of their world. So, and this is kind of a little bit my problem with blockchain, because it kind of assumes that, I mean, to a certain extent of, not really, but some people prescribe to this, like, I have the right to bring all my assets into every world, and I don't agree with that. So if you have a lot of people who create Minecraft worlds, they have a very specific goal intent with a very specific style, and then they don't want to open up their system to just anything to come in. And there's a lot of virtual worlds like this as well that just have a particular style. They don't want to all of a sudden introduce space age kind of technology or something like that. So the first thing is that an obvious thing is to make it easy is just have mapping. So then that's what I did in the Doom 3 Minecraft version, is that you basically have a mapping between things. So you just have the leather tunic turns into an equal item in the other world. So then basically if you have an item coming in from another world, then the world owner can then choose okay, that's an interesting item. I want to support that item, but I'm going to map that to this item over here. And then that will be equivalent. And the world owner chooses that equivalence. Mm-hmm. So, and then in the question of blockchain, I don't see it. I also see it in a vein of you deliver the asset to the other world, but I still think also the world owner should be able to choose and say, okay, we support blockchain. You can import your assets, but when we import your assets, we have the right to actually do a translation of those assets and deem which assets are viable, which ones we just do not support, which ones we want to translate into items that are relative to ours, or and there are definitely things that need to be handled, like the different graphic styles, behaviors, and things like that. So those things need to be handled by the world owners themselves. So how much, if that can be automated, that's also a question. So you can do maybe group translations, like or it might be just pinpointing, like we only want to support just a few of these external items, for example.
So you had to define those translations yourself prior to doing this teleport, right? Like
Yes.
you did that individually. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It's not so hard from Doom to Minecraft because there's not that many items, so you can pretty much, I mean, it's an easy mapping to make, and it's not labor intensive. It's just like you equalize two fields. This field equals that field, and it's just a matching table. So.
But it really makes sense what you say, because I can see a situation where one metaverse game may have a weapon that would make another metaverse game obsolete. That weapon would be able to kill everything, and you defeat the whole game, and so that second metaverse might not want that weapon as part of their ecosystem for obvious reasons. So you've got to, that's interesting. So you'd work with the world owners to ensure that that their vision is still maintained in terms of what they want their world to be.
Well, they have that choice. So if I create a world and I say I want to support blockchain, and so all of a sudden, if I have the Web3 apes that I want to support, then I choose which ones they come in and which ones I don't want to come in. I mean, I have that choice. I support blockchain, but I can still put brakes on what items to allow. So I mean, it should be like that if you're the one creating the world, right?
Agreed.
But what if there are 3 million weapon assets, for example, over the world? That's a lot of work for the developers.
Exactly. So that is where the automation comes in. So either you do like group translations, so where you can specify different like characteristics to do groups, or you just allow a subset that you say, well, we only support the subset, and then you have like the large questions, like just how much AI will play a part in the metaverse, of course. So I mean, in a sense, you're going to get more and more advances in just being able to automate that process. So AI is going to both allow the opportunity to have much more assets be created, but also the opportunity to allow much of those assets to be sorted and maintained as well.
So in your view, how important are standardization and common protocols for the future of interoperable systems in the metaverse?
So they are important, obviously. So this is something I also want to mention, is that so you have to consider that every time you ask a company to implement a protocol, and then also on each update of that protocol, it also requires them to insert re-engineering costs for their system, right? So if a system supports HTML4 and then you require it to implement HTML5, then that requires a re-engineering cost. So you don't want to have protocols change every 5 seconds in order to meet like some kind of demand of a changing metaverse. So you want standards to be there. So, but those standards should be a standard that also is in place for a longer period of time. So until a competing standard comes about that actually has substantial amount of features that are different. So I think standards are very important, and there definitely needs to be lots of them, but for different areas like avatars and assets and things like that. But again, I advocate for more like an organic evolution of the standards in order to get them so that they're in place properly, actually.
Okay. And how can developers ensure that efforts to achieve interoperability also prioritize user-centric design and user experience?
I think the largest part that can be done is, so what I've noticed is, as well, as that a lot of these systems now currently, a lot of them are that they still require a lot of manual effort from the user themselves. So for example, okay, do you want to have a custom skin? Great. Here, use this SDK we've provided, or go ahead and create your skin in Blender and then implement it and then import it through our custom API like interface, and then you will support it. But if you're going to have if you're going to have this kind of interoperability between other systems, then those things need to be programmable. So I mean that you can automatically have it so that, say I created my avatar, but I created it in a different system, then if there's a way to, if there's already a translation available from this avatar to be transported to the same graphical format of the one that of the world I'm going to, then okay, great. But then why not have it so that I can programmatically move that asset over and that avatar over and have the translation done and then imported, instead of this kind of thing. Okay, the user's burdened by, okay, maybe I have to have my avatar offline, saved on disk, and then in different graphical formats, and I have to implement them, like upload them all myself. I mean, this is a large burden for the user, and then it doesn't allow any kind of seamlessness whatsoever. So in getting an effective teleporting between worlds.
Yeah, and then you also will not have mass adoption to this world if you need to do it like this. Maybe
Well,
the gamers, but
you're going to at least have a limited feature set. Yeah. So I mean, you might be able to teleport, because teleportation can be done in essence almost with just identity, you know, being solved, like and mapping identity. But the thing is that you want more than that. You want to have assets, and you want to have your friends, and you want to have your avatar preferably, and maybe many other things that you want to be able to share with between worlds. So yeah, so I think that you definitely want a richer feature set than just saying, well, okay, all these things are automated, but these things you're gonna have to do manually. So I don't think you want that.
no. Russell, something to add, or?
Yeah, I just in agreement. I mean, there's user experience is so important. It's been lagging in this industry since the very beginning, and you know, in terms of even like in terms of basic cryptocurrency and exchanges and wallets and the whole thing. It's really you know, if we want true mass adoption, we have to make things as easy as possible, especially for new users, make things as intuitive as possible. And, you know, each metaverse has their own theory about how to go about this, and they're all different. But that's, I think the interoperability is not only moving assets and moving from one world to another, but also having more or less a common user experience and some sort of common interface, and you know, so that you learn one world and you go to another one, you're not starting from scratch having to learn it all over again. There should be some commonality between the user experience.
Yeah.
So I can add to that a little bit as well. And so one thing I think is like a big issue is like if you have a lot of headsets now and they all have their different controller buttons and such, and so when a user comes into a virtual world, they have to relearn which buttons do what. But I mean, it should be possible that your preference are kind of saved and moved over between worlds. Like, okay, these buttons are the ones that the users set on that device, on that virtual world. So then they map these controls to this new world, so that they should just be able to go forward and use the same kind of controls. So there should be a mapping there as well. There might not be a perfect one-to-one match, but at least a similar mapping should be there. So, and then also we have there's also complexity of the metaverse, is that you want to be able to support multiple different devices. So for example, if you have an iPad, or if you have a desktop, or if you have a headset, I mean, these are different representations. So you want to be able to have a different interaction with the metaverse depending on your device. Some devices are low powered, some devices have super lots of capability. So you want to be able to cater to those devices as well. So the interface itself also has to be you know, flexible in this sense. So that means that your integrations also have to deal with this. So if you're going to make a component that allows for a certain kind of capacity, like I have a map component, for example, that component can then be available on a number of different systems and act differently on the different systems depending on how much power is available.
I have an interesting question. Do you ever foresee, I guess this would require the world owners actually integrating on a deeper level, but could you ever have a situation where you're playing on one world from another world, like true integration, where you can there might be a quest on one world, and maybe you only have the right weapons or the right items or avatar in another world, and you actually go in and truly combine the worlds. Is that something, or is that too deep?
No. I definitely don't think it's too deep. So I think that what I've been working on is really kind of metaverse minimal viable product. But I mean, so the next steps, which I've never actually published anything on or done any work on or advocated much on, is that. So I would like to actually see more interoperability. So imagine, say, for example, that you would have a virtual world, and those components of that virtual world could be created out of different companies. So, for example, say one company is really good at making backgrounds, and another company is really good at making the auction house, another company is really good at making avatars, and they can then like make those pieces and not have too much baggage with having to do the collaboration work. They can plug it into the system, and they can create one very large virtual world that is a collection of all these different things. And so this means that also you, like an MMO is an amazingly difficult endeavor, because it is just encompasses so many different technologies and abilities that it's like, I mean, it's amazing endeavor to create an MMO. So to alleviate that would be just to say, well, we're going to have a company that just specializes in one thing, and then the MMO would be like this one collaborative effort. And then who knows what that might be. Then it could be like, say that maybe you would have, I don't know, 20% of the market share of the metaverse could be one giant cohesive, world. So that might be that's something like that is definitely feasible. I think there's a number of problems that need to be solved, but I think it is possible in the future. And that is where I want to go. But that would require some research still, and prototyping in order to get to that point. I don't know anyone no one has really approached me to go into that direction yet. So everyone's still worried about metaverse, minimal viable product. So we'll see about the future.
I really love that idea. I'm just thinking like you could almost create like an industry standards body, like what they've done in the banking industry, like SWIFT, where every single individual vendor subscribes to this standard model, and then they become part of the larger, standardized ecosystem. And then developers, like you said, and development houses can start becoming even more specialized and can create a single item with a single programming language and have it instantly available across all of the metaverses that are part of the standard body.
So now I have to catch you there, because again, my philosophy would be that we don't have a single standard. We have multiple standards. We have translations in between them. So again, you're falling in this kind of trap of that you have to have a standard in order to get it done, and it's not the case. So you can have multiple competing standards. You can always have translation in the system. So the system has to be optimized in order to deal with those translations. But the system's not going to work if you have to enforce one single standard the whole entire time. I don't think you're going to get the interoperability you want.
Interesting. Okay. Well,
Kim, every time we talk to you, I'm amazed with your knowledge, and I see the problem. It's an easy problem solution, but the way to go to the solution, we need people like you, man. This is fucking amazing. Sorry, YouTube. No,
you'll edit that part out.
No, it's really nice, and you already told us what you're foreseeing in the future. But looking ahead, what are the predictions for the near future and the future in interoperability and mixed reality and the metaverse? But you're also doing this for smart cities, where you are backed by the government as well.
So I see an analogy. I see an analogy between the metaverse and other areas, of course. So the way I don't work on the metaverse per se. I work on systems of systems integration. So there are lots of different systems of systems, and one of those is the metaverse, is the smart cities as well as the metaverse. So it's systems of systems applied to the metaverse. I think you can. There's so much areas to work on this kind of interoperability between systems. There's so much to be done. And I think that is if we go further, then also incorporating this kind of idea of having a digital twin of the. I don't like that concept anymore either, because it's also like ambiguous now, the digital twin concept. So like having an ecosystem, a digital landscape that is of the physical world that can then also be part of the metaverse, I think is also very interesting. So, and how the overlap there will be, and how far that will go, and how an interesting question is, how far will humans allow themselves to be augmented with technology is also a really interesting question. Me and a previous colleague were at a conference, and we this was quite a long time ago. We said, like, are people really going to sit on like a tram or public transport with their VR headset, on and just be completely like immersed in their world, in a public place? And so, but we're at that point now where you can, you're almost going to see these people in public areas with their headsets on. So
yeah, Apple Vision Pro is commercialized in planes, so yeah.
And at the end of the day, you don't even need a headset. I mean, people on their cell phones, they become so engrossed, they're completely oblivious to everything around them. So we're almost there already.
Yeah. So I'm really curious. Like, I wear glasses myself, so it's not for me, it's not a big step to put on a headset, I guess you could sort of say. But I mean, I think for people who don't wear glasses, then to put a giant headset on your face though for more than like an hour or two, I don't know. Again, for me, there's a lot of questions there of not the tech side, but also the human side of it. Like, will there be a pushback from the human side? And so I'm not convinced that all the technology visions will come to pass, because you do have the human side too.
Yeah. But for how long are you working on the interoperability now?
Interoperability became an interest actually during my PhD. But in Metaverse, I've been working on since 2003. So,
wow, a lot of questions.
Yeah. So
okay, and yeah, you still not told us what the timing would be when we can expect something like interruptible worlds working together.
Well, it depends. I mean, so the thing is that I am in a few groups working on interoperability. So the idea is to kind of get some kind of ARPANET already up and running, where you have a number of small participants that are interconnected. But again, it is, so we're talking about a socio-technological problem, not just a technological one. So again, how much will the human factor influence the adoption of these protocols and things like that? So it is not, and we haven't even talked about IP and copyright and such. So it's not so simple as to say, well, we're going to solve the technology part, where you have to also solve for the human part. So one of the reasons we designed the system that we did was, so say for example, you walk up to Blizzard and you say, okay, you have World of Warcraft. We want you to open up your system and be interoperable with all these other virtual worlds. If they have the 10 billion people on World of Warcraft, they're obviously going to say, why would we do this? We have 10 billion people on our platform. We have no reason to open up our platform to other people. I mean, so the idea is, in contrast to that, is to have it so that you have smaller groups of people that can then bundle together, and that after a while, if there's a value for a larger participant, that they say, hey, there is a network out there, and there's 10, 20 different 30 or different worlds that are bundled together, and they're sharing assets or whatever, and there is value in that for us to also share, in as much as we want to share. Again, the owners choose. So and then that would then also make it possible for these larger fish to also join into the ecosystem. And so again, this kind of more organic kind of forming of the metaverse. And again, you have to play on this human thing, is like, you have people who are running businesses and they have to make profits and stuff like that, and they want to keep their users safe. So you have to play and cater to that. So.
Yeah, with a lot of gratitude, you are working together with us, and it's really exciting. And what excites you the most about collaborating with us, and how do you see your work synergizing with our goals and our sister company, Blockchain Valley?
Well, I think that obviously, I think that I'm looking for the richness of different participants and different problems that you're attempting to solve. So and then the possibility that you already have actors in this area that are working for having interoperable systems, that is great, because then that could already be part of the ARPANET again. So to already have systems that are speaking to each other and then to work on the seamlessness and to get the usability, correct, so that it eases the step in to the Web3 world and other like technological things. I think that is very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and like I said, really exciting that you're also working with our sister company, Blockchain Valley. And one thing we have over there is that we also will build the virtual world of the Blockchain Valley. So that's amazing. Then we can figure something out that can be a better situation for people living in that area as well, to the virtual world and the physical world. Um, Maybe Russell, you have an additional question because we're almost at 40 minutes.
Yeah, and not just a question, but yeah, I would just say, Kim, just from our last conversation and then watching some of your videos and reading up on some of the things that you've written on industry of integration, very impressive. That's I just wanted to reiterate what Phil said. I told him when we got on the phone, I said, Kim should be our CTO. Like, he's really so technically proficient, and just I watched your videos in awe of what the kind of things that you're doing. So really happy to have you on board, and looking forward to great things that we can do together.
Well, let's see if we can push the envelope. That would be awesome. I mean, it would be really great to make progress.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll keep in touch, definitely. Thank you very much for this podcast, guys. It was amazing, and we learned a lot. And if the people have some questions for you, Kim, they can drop it in the comments, and I will bring it to on your side.
Thanks for
Great.
the opportunity.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
No problem.
Talk to you soon. Take care.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.